Last night, there were some serious explosions in several regions of Russia. First, our tactical aviation carried out a bombing strike on an FSB base in the Bryansk region. As a result of the attack, the building near the village of Beloboriska was completely destroyed. Preliminary reports indicate that the strike was carried out with aerial bombs. The rest of the regions were terrorized by drones all night long. In Stavropol Krai, drones attacked the Nevenomysky Azot plant. Dozens of impacts were recorded there. In the Tambov region, a local gunpowder factory in the city of Kotovsk was hit. In the Rostov region, UAVs targeted railway infrastructure and distribution stations that were used to transport equipment for the aggressor's army. As a result, the movement of at least 20 trains will be halted. Because of the attack, they even had to announce the carpet plan and close the airspace around the airports of Vladikavkaz, Grozny, Megas, Mineralnye Vody, Nalchik, Stavropol, Sochi, and Tambov. There were also strikes on the Russian army's base in occupied Donetsk. There, the railway infrastructure was also hit, and one of the strikes targeted the area near the Zasyadko mine, where the occupiers were entrenched.
Another round of explosions happened in Russia on the night of July 23rd. Ukrainian drones attacked the railway junction in Novocherkassk, Rostov region. This is one of the logistical hubs used by the occupiers to resupply their forces and equipment for the front. Judging by how fiercely it burned, it will now be much harder for the Russians to do that. In addition, Defense Force drones also attacked the Rostelecom building and a thermal power plant, further complicating the operations of the airports in Kaluga and Nizhny Novgorod, to the point that the Russians once again had to declare the cover plan.
In particular, last night, the first footage appeared. It's always a pleasure to watch them. Drones attacked the railway junction in Novocherkassk, Rostov region. The day before, there was a collapse on the railway in Rostov-on-Don, with both passenger and military transport coming to a halt. And, of course, the stories and shouts of Russians in the airports were music to the ears. According to their official information, from July 19th to 22nd, 517 flights were cancelled at airports in the Moscow region and St. Petersburg. 75,000 passengers were affected. As they put it, the situation affected them. Well, that's how they say it. Do strikes like these, as I started to say, prevent them from building up strength and advancing?
Well, actually, if we're talking about strikes on infrastructure used to carry out aggression against our country, then each such strike, for example, forces the Russians to rearrange their logistics and, at the very least, slows down the frontline operations they had planned for their so-called summer-autumn campaign in particular. For example, we recently attacked the Milorovo airfield. It is also a major launch site for Shahids, and for those decoy drones, Garin. And it's quite large-scale and capable of launching between 60 and 90 drones per day. And likewise, holding such locations as Milorovo is very important because it's from here that Russian tactical aviation takes off, which terrorizes the line of contact and the Ukrainian state border with guided aerial bombs. If we return to the topic of airports, recently airports in Ivanova, Kaluga, Pskov, St. Petersburg, and Tambov have come under fire. And at the very least, operations at 3 airports were halted for a whole day. The damages amount to between $300,000 and $500,000. But here's an important nuance. We're focusing not so much on the economic consequences, but more, in principle, on matters of justice. Because if our airspace is closed, then why should it be open for the Russians? And the fact that we are forcing international players and airlines, including those that transit through Russian territory, to look for new routes that bypass the territory, routes that avoid the territory of the Russian Federation. I would also like to remind you that the transfer of equipment, ammunition, and personnel from the so-called Far Eastern military districts is also carried out by aviation. Therefore, in fact, disrupting the enemy's logistics regarding transportation, as well as delivering, well, a significant blow to the image of the Russian Federation, well, that's exactly what we achieve as a result of such strikes. Because the duration of the so-called cover plan, when airports are not operating, it really is increasing. For example, in Domodedovo, a record was set, about 60 hours, Nukovo, around 45 hours, and 30 hours for Domodedovo. And all of this, in the end, is forcing both international partners and citizens of the Russian Federation who enjoy vacationing in warm countries to, let's put it mildly, change their plans.
Recently, hostile Russian infantry has been observed between Kamiansk and Stepnohursk. This is on the left bank of the Dnipro in the Zaporizhzhia region. This was reported by the 128th Separate Mountain Assault Zakarpattia Brigade. However, these Russian raids always end the same way. Our soldiers destroy them, the brigade says. A bit further east, in the area of Stepov, Mali Sherbeki, and Sherbeki, our crews are eliminating enemy infantry. Overall, according to the latest data from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, there were 174 combat clashes along the entire front line of the Russian-Ukrainian war in the past day. The most, just under a third, as usual, were in the Pokrovsk direction. The situation is also difficult in the Lyman sector. There, 24 battles took place. And now about enemy losses. Here are today's figures from the General Staff. 980 soldiers killed and wounded were lost by the Russian occupiers over the past day. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Russian army has decreased by 1,047,250 soldiers. Our defenders have also smashed the enemy's equipment. Over 11,000 tanks and 23,000 armored fighting vehicles have been destroyed in the battles. And also 30,777 enemy artillery systems, 1,500 multiple rocket launch systems, and 1,201 air defense systems. More than 47,500 tactical level drones and 3,535 cruise missiles have been neutralized. To date, 421 Russian planes and 340 helicopters have been shot down. And at sea, 28 ships and boats and 1 submarine have been neutralized. The United States has approved the sale to Ukraine of a package for air defense system maintenance worth $180 million. The website of the Defense Security Cooperation Agency states that the supply list includes spare parts, repair equipment, consumables, as well as personnel training. In addition, the State Department has approved the possible sale to Ukraine of M109 self-propelled howitzers, maintenance and repair equipment, as well as related equipment worth about $150 million. Another package will also include Hawk air defense systems and Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. It is not known who will pay for these packages, but the American side emphasizes in its statements that this sale is in line with the strategic interests of the United States.
Crashed in Russia. None of those on board survived. The N-24 was traveling from Khabarovsk to Tinda, was unable to land, went for a second approach, and then lost contact. According to various reports, there were between 46 and 49 people on board. The wreckage was found 16 kilometers from the airport, but the rescue helicopter couldn't land nearby, so rescuers are making their way there by land. An investigation has been launched under the article for violation of aircraft operation rules, resulting in the death of more than 3 people. The Russian commander who last year ordered the downing of an Azerbaijan Airlines passenger plane, killing dozens of people, has been promoted. His name and photographs have been published in the local press. He is Major General Alexander Tolokelo of the 51st Air Force and Air Defense Division. He was the one who gave the order to the duty officer to fire to kill at the passenger aircraft using the Panzer-S air defense system. According to the Azerbaijani publication Minval, the commander himself shifted the blame onto the staff of the Rostov Airspace Control Center and then even lied, claiming that the missiles launched from the Panzer had self-destructed and therefore could not have damaged the aircraft. Despite this, Tolokelo was not only not punished, but was even promoted to deputy commander. The president of Azerbaijan recently announced that they are preparing a lawsuit against Russia and international institutions over this air disaster. According to Ilham Aliyev, all the circumstances of the incident are known. However, for more than half a year now, Baku has not received any reasonable response from the Kremlin. The Azerbaijani side is demanding an admission of guilt, that those responsible be held accountable, and compensation be paid to the families of the victims and to the Azov airline. Baku also recently handed over to Moscow evidence of the deaths of 2 of its citizens from torture in Ekaterinburg. They are also expecting results and punishment of those responsible in this case.